When I first inspected Aftermath Analyst, I knew this card was just waiting to be broken. A 2-mana green creature that mills 3 cards when it enters play, and for 4 mana you can sacrifice it to return all lands from your graveyard to the battlefield. Now it doesn't take a detective to figure out that Analyst, in combination with Valakut the Molten Pinnacle, has explosive potential when combined together. So today we've built a brand new Gruul brew that is capable of dumping a ton of lands in the graveyard with ease, and then can bring them all back to one-shot our opponent's dead. Did we crack the case with Aftermath Analyst? Here's a clue. Yes, we did. I don't want to jinx myself, but this deck did not lose in testing. Let's see if we can keep it going. Round 1, we're on the draw against an opponent who leads with a mana confluence. There's really only one meta deck that plays that as land, and that's Dredge. As the name suggests, Dredge is a graveyard aggro deck that summons hordes of creatures from the underworld to attack and kill as early as turn 3. An omen of good things to come. Like a luck sack, my first draw step reveals my main deck Endurance. We'll hold on to that for now and play out one of the key cards in our deck, Elvish Reclaimer, which can tutor for any land at a moment's notice. They try to get their engine going with Cathartic Reunion, discarding 2 dredgers and dredging 3 times. They flip a Creeping Chill, which drains me for 3 life, but they can't put any creatures into play. This means that I don't have to use my Endurance, and Elvish Reclaimer is now online. They dredge again, and in response to a Narcomoeba trigger, I activate the Reclaimer and get Bazooka Bog to exile their graveyard. Now they're on to plan B, Beatdown, casting a Stinkweed Imp and passing the turn back. And now I'm in firm control. I take my turn by casting out Dryad of the Ilysian Grove, which makes all my lands into mountains. I play out my second land for turn, Scalding Tarn, and send it on back. They dredge off a Dark Blast, whiff, swing for 1, and put us down to 10 life. We get to untap, and our engine is now completely online. I activate Reclaimer, sacrifice Bazooka Bog, get a Valakut, and cast out Wrenn and 6, which can now rebuy the Bog from my graveyard every turn. My second land for turn triggers Valakut, which puts them down to 14, and then a swing for 2, and they're down to 12 life. Creeping Chill on their turn puts me down to 7, and then they attack me down to 6, and cast out Silver Smoke Ghoul. I fetch end of turn for Commercial District, surveil, and see Aftermath Analyst on top. Let's have some fun. Untap, return a Tarn, play a Tarn, Valakut trigger, fetch, basic mountain, Valakut trigger, 2 mana, Analyst, mill 3, sack the Analyst, turn all my lands, and our opponent is super dead. So game 1 was a cakewalk, but game 2 we were forced to mull all the way down to 5 cards. Let's see how we fare at a deficit when our opponent has a fast start. Opponent with a mana confluence, Tomb Scour. Wow, pretty good. So right off the bat, Narcomoeba and Amalgam. I think that's fine. Untap, drawn to a Stomping Ground. We're going to be fetching basics here. Fetch, Basic Mountain, Soul Guide, Trigger, and we'll get rid of Tomb Scour. City of Brass, attack for 4. We're going down to 12. Untap, draw a second Stomping Ground. We'll go Wooded Foothills, fetch, Forest, Wrenn and 6, and we'll kill this Narcomoeba. Opponent with a Gaze, end of turn, put a Conflagrate in the graveyard, which is a little scary. Untap, draw the Imp, attacking at me, putting me down to 8. Draw into a Tranquil Thicket, return Wooded Foothills, and I will shock in the Stomping Ground. Opponent's paying costs, Gaze, they take 2, Creeping Chill, we're going to fire off this Endurance right now. Trigger, target them. So now that Endurance is in play and their graveyard is clear, I've bought myself a little bit of time. I play out my Dryad in 2 lands, and they go back to work, starting to fill up their graveyard again. Narcomoeba enters the fray, and they dredge into another Creeping Chill during their draw step. I can't afford to go down to 3 life, so I use my Soul Guide Lantern to exile their graveyard and negate the Chill's trigger. While I'm low on life, my engine is really starting to roll, using Thicket with Wrenn and 6 for 2 draws a turn. I draw into Nissa Resurgent Animus, which furthers my momentum and can help me find a Reclaimer, Analyst, or another Endurance. I wind up finding Analyst first and cast it out, needing to buy myself 1 more turn to establish control. They cast Cathartic Reunion, and whiff. Whew, call me Neo, because I'm dodging bullets over here. Untap. Alright, we draw into Valakut, which I think should be lethal. Play the Reclaimer, play the Valakut, trigger, pointing at them, trigger Nissa, add a red, activate the Analyst, turn our lands to play. There's going to be 5 Valakut triggers. Point them at them. GG's, Dredger. So we're 1-0, and we're off to round 2, which starts with my opponent revealing a Kahira as their companion, which likely means they're on blue-white control. As is the case with any control deck, the way they win is by drawing the game out and boring you to death. They call it inevitability. But there's a problem with this strategy against our deck. They achieve this boredom through resource management, using counter magic and creature removal to negate our threats. But their fancy spells don't have a way to deal with lands, particularly lands that deal damage. So literally, all we have to do to win this matchup is play out our lands turn after turn. That's it. It's literally that easy. So because I don't want you to die of boredom as well, we're not going to hash out the specifics of 2 straight games of us making land drops. Just know, we blew them sky high. So we haven't lost a game up to this point. Spoiler, it didn't last. Round 3 we find ourselves in a good old-fashioned slobber knocker against Amulet Titan. They did dirty Amulet things in game 1, which was just too fast and too furious for us to handle. But we sideboarded and loaded our deck up with artifact hate and aren't ready to go down without a fight. Opponent with a Gruul Turf, triggers on the stack, we're going to Ghost Quarter. They get a Forest, return the forest to hand. I drew a Pithing Needle, which can hit a ring. Can also hit something like Teleria West. We'll just play Scalding Tarn and pass it back. Gruul Turf trigger, untap, 3 mana, turn a land to hand, Dryad, Forest, and we're going to blow these up end of turn. Fetch, another Commercial District, trigger, Scalding Tarn, we'll put that in the graveyard. Untap. Alright, Reclaimer's pretty good. Foothills, Claimer, I'm going to Needle, and I am going to name the One Ring, despite the fact it's in our deck. And we'll yield through the turn. Fun with a land. Alright, name the right card. Get protection. Back to us. Fetch. Get a Stomping Ground tapped. Untap. Alright, Nissa really good. 3 mana Nissa. Foothills. Add a mana. We'll fetch. Get a Forest. Trigger. Add a mana. Another Nissa into hand. I'll activate the Reclaimer. Get rid of the Forest. And we'll get another Ghost Quarter. Opponent Besages the Pithing Needle. We'll get a Stomping Ground tapped. They will be able to activate their One Ring now. Play out a Valakut. Back our way. Alright, Renin 6 is excellent. One of the ways we can beat big mana decks, like Tron and Amulet Titan, is by establishing a lock with Ghost Quarter and Renin 6. Essentially, we can destroy their lands turn after turn until they run out of basics. We're now at that point in this game where they're out of basic lands to search for. What we need to do from here is keep them from having an explosive turn with Amulet of Vigor or Spelunking, and prevent multiple land drops. If we can do that, we should be able to pull this out. We'll pass turn back. Opponent takes 2 off the ring, draws 3, 8 cards in hand, 3 mana for Spelunking, trigger, Growth Chamber, turn a land to hand, another Growth Chamber, another land to hand, Grazer, trigger, Growth Chamber. This is going to be a Titan, Summoner's Pact, 6 mana Titan, and with these triggers on the stack, I'm going to get rid of the Stronghold. Okay, they get a Bojuka Bog. I was hoping they wouldn't. Okay, return Bojuka Bog to hand, exile our graveyard. End of turn, we'll make a Construct. An opponent responds with a Besage. Sure. Then we'll get another Stomping Ground, tapped, untap. Okay, we draw into a mountain, play that out, trigger Nissa, add a green, activate Reclaimer, sacrifice the mountain, get a Valakut, trigger, add a green, get a Reclaimer, 2 mana, Reclaimer, sacrifice Valakut, Sheltered Thicket, add a green, greens across the board, Zurin Orb, sacrifice all of our lands, Analyst, activate, all of our lands are back in play, we won't pay any life. Alright, we got a bunch of triggers. Okay, and our opponent scoops it up, we're going to game 3. So game 2 was a nail biter, and game 3 is about to be no different. We have an opening hand with Ghost Quarter, so I decide to keep, despite not having an untapped green source. My opponent leads with a Saga into an Amulet, and then follows up with a second Amulet on turn 2, not making a land drop. I draw Renin 6, but lead out on my Ghost Quarter because we can most definitely die from this position if they get double or triple untap on a Karoo land. Instead of a third Amulet, they opt to get Expedition Map with Saga's 3rd chapter. They follow up with a Boros Garrison, which seems like bait, but I still Ghost Quarter it down to keep them off of ring mana. They use their floating mana to crack the map and get a Simic Growth Chamber, and then pass it on back. So now I can play out Renin 6, buy back my Ghost Quarter, and try to establish the lock we had last game. I need to fade one more turn to make this happen. They lead with Grazer, play out Growth Chamber, add 4 mana, and play out a Dryad of their own. So they play out the Growth Chamber again, netting another 4 mana up to 5. They transmute Teleria West and get Summoner's Pact, and then dismember my Reclaimer. That was scary. Now it's back to our turn. We're going to start by cycling our Thicket. We find Emrakul, plus Wrenn and 6, turn Thicket, play out the Ghost Quarter, pass turn back. Okay, opponent plays Teleria West, that will be 2 mana. They follow it up with a Growth Chamber. We're going to get rid of the Growth Chamber. Basic Forest, they add 3 mana, Teleria West back to hand, transmute. We know they already have 1 Summoner's Pact in hand. They get a Growth Chamber. I've already made 2 land drops. Attack Wrenn and 6, down to 3. Untapped land. Alright, we're in business. We'll plus Wrenn and 6, return Ghost Quarter, play out Saga, Dryad, Ghost Quarter, pass turn back. Opponent another Dismember, hit our Dryad. It's okay, we got another one. Opponent plays out Otawara, attack Wrenn and 6, down to 2. Untap. Saga up to 2. We'll start by Ghost Quartering Forest, return Ghost Quarter to hand, play out Ghost Quarter, Dryad, Commercial District, another Wrenn and 6, so we'll keep that there. So from this position, the only way we can lose is if they draw a second Karoo land this turn, and only this turn. So there's the one we knew about, and there's number 2, which they had to have drawn. Ugh. So there goes our 5-0, but after such a disheartening loss where it felt like we were an inch away from locking up this game, I was determined to not lose another match. We're about to go on a rampage. We easily dismantled Blue-Red Murktide in 2 straight games the next round, and then for our 5th and final match, get paired into the new Bolian Modern Domain Rhinos. Let's show them we mean business. Alright, opponent has a Gemstone Caverns to start things off. I'm going to start with my Sheltered Thicket. Pass turn. Opponent with a Flooded Strand. Alright, we draw Wrenn and 6 pretty good. Wooded Foothills Fetch. Basic Mountain. We're going to get Wrenn and 6 going. Plus, Foothills back to hand. Opponent gets a Triome and untaps. Arid Mesa. Alright, we draw into a Zuran Orb, which isn't bad. Wooded Foothills. We'll fetch. Get a Basic Mountain. I'm going to play Dryad. Wooded Foothills. Cycle a Thicket. Found a Stomping Ground. Return Thicket to hand. And we'll pass turn. Opponent fetches. Shocks in the Steam Vents. Here come the Rhinos. Temple Garden Shock. 4 at me, 4 at Wrenn and 6. We'll let this happen, see if this is another Violent Outburst. And it is. This is why I held the explosives. More Rhinos. Wrenn is gone. Opponent with the Binding and hit our Dryad. Drawn to a Shadow Spear. They have 2 in hand, so they need Force Blue card. I'm going to start by fetching. Basic Forest, Analyst, Trigger. Looks like they're F6'd. Stomping Ground, tapped, Explosives. Opponent attacks with a team, no blocks. Pop the Explosives before damage. Opponent suspends Footfalls, plays out a Scion. Haywire Might will get our Dryad back. We'll start by cycling the Thicket. Draw another Dryad, which is nice. We can save the Might. We'll play out Zuran Orb. We're going to sacrifice some lands, and we'll sacrifice the Analyst. Over the course of this league, the secret MVP of this deck was Zuran Orb. The combination of Orb and Aftermath Analyst, as you just saw, can buy a ton of time. Our opponent recognizes the value of Zuran Orb and shoots it down with a Force of Vigor. We draw our second EE, play out Might and Dryad, equip Shadow Spear, and pass the turn back. The opponent is going to be hard-pressed to race us from this position. But I do make a mistake and attack him with my Dryad before playing out the Explosives that I drew on my last turn. And I knew the second that I committed to the attack that a Violent Outburst meant my Dryad would get double blocked and would die in combat. It's not the end of the world, but definitely a blunder. I play out the Analyst I drew for the turn and pass it back. But with the game dragging on and having the second Engineered Explosives as an insurance policy, I'm still confident we can grind out the win. I sacrifice Might in response to Dismember to get my Dryad back from a Leyline Binding, and play out my third Analyst of the game. All we need to do is find a Valakut, and the game is over. No luck so far. Their 4th Crashing Footfalls comes off suspend during their upkeep, and I blow up the Explosives to deal with them one last time. A sign of weakness, no attacks with the Scion on my opponent's turn, and it feels like the game is firmly in my control. I make 2 constructs with my Saga and then return it with the Analyst with plans of making 2 more. But it turns out I don't need to. I draw a ring, which finally draws me into a Valakut, and it's GG. We're on to game 3 for the 4-1. Hand looks good, we'll keep. Opponent's on a 6-card hand, no leyline, love to see it. Arid Mesa, we draw a Dryad, start Wooded Foothills, fetch, forest, and a Reclaimer. Opponent fetches, Triumph tapped. Flooded Strand, fetch, Steam Vents, shock, and a Kavu. So this means they boarded out their rhinos most likely. I'm going to play Scalding Tarn, fetch, Basic Mountain, Renin 6, plus, return Foothills. And I'm still going to play this Chalice out on 0, just in case. Opponent with a land, attack at Renin 6, eat the land out of our graveyard, and we're fine with that. Untap. Draw into Commercial District. I don't think they can flash anything in here, so we'll start with an attack for 1. They're down to 15. Foothills, fetch, Mountain, Dryad, Commercial District. Pick your poison is interesting. I think we'll put that to the graveyard. Opponent with a 4 end of turn, hit our Chalice and our Dryad. Land, binding to the graveyard. Attack for 5, we're going to go down to 12. They draw and discard a leyline. Land, back our way. Another Commercial District. Play a Dryad, resolves. Mesa, District, trigger, Thicket, put that to the graveyard. We'll just pass back. Opponent with a binding, hit our Dryad. That's fine. Fetch end of turn, Thundering Falls. Land to the graveyard. Attack for 5, eat the Thicket. We're at 7. We'll fetch, and then I'm going to shock here. We'll get rid of the forest, and we'll get a Saga. Untap. Saga up to 2. Analyst, Valakut, no attacks, and pass turn back. Alright, we need one more turn. Opponent attacks for 5. Eats Arid Mesa. We're going to make a construct. We'll block. Back our way. Draw into a Renin 6. Saga up to 3. Make a construct. We're going to get a Zuran Orb. An attack for 3. I'm going to play Renin 6. Opponent with a Force and Negation. Sure. Arid Mesa. Attack for 5. Draw and discard. We'll jump. We draw into a Saga. I'm going to play out the Saga. Trigger. Combat. Attack for 3. Opponent's down to 7. They fetch. Down to 6. Temple Garden tapped. I'm going to sack the Saga. I'm going to sack the Mountain. Sack the Valakut. Stomping Ground. And we're going to sack the Analyst here. We will not pay 2 life. 2 Sagas. Back to my opponent. Attack for 5. Discard a leyline. We're down to 9. Play a land. Scion. You got it. And they scoop it up. 4-1. All right. This deck was super impressive. The combination of Aftermath, Analyst, Dryad of the Ilysian Grove, and Valakut was a very powerful finisher that you saw us use multiple times over the course of that league. Let's finish this thing out, open up some chests. Hope you've enjoyed today's video. I will catch you all again very soon, and until then, you know the deal, my friends. Be well.